Okay, good. Okay, we'll talk to you about it.
All right. Everybody, come on back. We want to try to keep this on schedule here. Come on back, come on back. Have a seat. We gotta get the schedule going. Gotta get everybody sitting down here. Come on back. So I want to do two things. One, we somehow there was a miscommunication, and Cliff Gager is here. Thank you, Cliff. Unfortunately, it's 2:30 now, and it's time for Randy to get up here. So if you guys want to stay from 4 to 4:30, I don't think they're going to kick us out of here. We'll have Cliff speak for the last half hour after Randy. Okay? So Randy Hughes, I want to get you up here. Thank you very much for showing up.
Okay, we are going to talk about land trusts. Everybody take a seat. Look this way for a while and act like you're awake. I'm Randy Hughes. I bet I came the furthest distance to get here. Did anybody come farther than 1,600 miles?
Before I did.
1,600 miles.
That's a long way.
That's how important this is to me. I'm a single-family house guy. That's how I make my living. But for the past 15 years, I've been teaching real estate investors how to use land trusts for privacy and asset protection. So we're going to talk about using a land trust to hold title to your real estate and why you should do that. Because it's my opinion that there is no reason to own real estate in your own personal name. There are only negatives. There are only bad things that are going to happen to you if you hold real estate in your own personal name. So why do it? Why not hold it in somebody else's name, like a trust? I'll give you a little preview here of what we're going to discover today. I'm going to explain what a land trust is, who should use a land trust, how to create a land trust, and a little bit of how to link these trusts together with other entities, like LLCs and corporations. It's funny, I had a student of mine called me. I'm in LA, and I rented a house up in LA, and I was driving down this morning, and I had a student of mine call me from the East Coast, and he got my home study course, which I brought with me today. He bought this home study course a year ago, and he said, you know, I can't get any attorneys in my state to help me get a land trust going on property in Pennsylvania. They all say use an LLC, right? And I said, that's typical. I use LLCs too, and I use corporations, but not to hold the title to the property. And we'll talk about that today, why you don't want to hold the title. We'll talk about leveraging land trusts for privacy and asset protection and to make more money out of your deals. You can actually make more profit from your deals if you use a land trust. And then we'll end up with 12 reasons to use a land trust. I keep getting asked the same questions over and over again wherever I go to speak. And so finally I got tired about 10 years ago, and I wrote a booklet called 32 Reasons to Use a Land Trust. I've been updating it recently, and it's currently called 50 Reasons to Use a Land Trust. And because I'm too lazy to change the title, if you read this, there are 53 reasons in here. And the reason why is I keep discovering new ways and reasons to use a land trust as well. And some of my students discover ways, and we discuss them, and I update my booklet. So I would be glad to give every one of you in here a copy of that book for free. Just after the meeting, just give me your business card and I'll email it to you as an attachment, okay? So, let me give you a little background, 2 minutes of background on myself. I promise not to bore you too much, but I think it's important to know who I am and where I've come from to build some credibility as to why what I'm telling you may have some validity, right? This is a picture of the house I grew up in. My parents paid $4,600 for that house. I remember their payments were $38 a month. And, so my point is, I'm not like Donald Trump. His daddy gave him $20 million to get started. That didn't happen in my family. There were no entrepreneurs in my family. Does anybody remember these days? Anybody old enough to remember Plaid?
Oh, yeah.
This is me in college, where I started buying single-family houses. I bought my first house in college in 1969. This is a picture of my wife and I. We got married right out of college, and we're married for 41 years. This is the first house I bought, the first rental property I bought while I was in college. It didn't look near this nice when I bought it. Somebody's since put new windows in it and some siding and a new roof on it, but 2-bedroom house, kitchen, living room, 1 bath. And I grew up in a college town, so we would stack college students in these bedrooms like cordwood, up the side of the walls. So we had 4 college students living in this small 2-bedroom house, and that made a nice positive cash flow. Here are some pictures of some properties that I control. I don't own. I don't own any real estate. In fact, I don't own anything, come to think of it. I don't own the car I drive or anything else. So I control them through land trusts. So I might be the beneficiary, or my LLC might be the beneficiary, or my corporation. So I have control, I just don't have the ownership to worry about. So I don't know, this is, I live in the Midwest in Illinois, so this is the kind of housing I have in my town. That's a bi-level. I love bi-levels because you can build them inexpensively. You stack one level on top of another, you get 2,000 square feet, and they rent for a nice rental rate. 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, this house is. I threw this slide in because this is a picture of me and my wife and daughters and my son-in-laws, and we were going out to celebrate a real estate deal. No, I don't own the jet, but I did rent it for the day, and that ain't cheap either. But it was a lot of fun, and my point here is, if you don't take the time to protect your assets, you'll never get to the point of enjoying. Because there are a lot of people out there in this day and age that want to get rich quick, like by suing, right? They don't want to work hard like we are. They don't want to take their Saturday afternoon to spend time learning how to do this. They just want to sue somebody that's already done. And the older you get, the more you realize just how much exposure you have. And that's why I go back to the comment, don't own real estate in your name, because it makes you a big, big target for a lawsuit. Just the fact that you own it. You may have no equity. You may be upside down. You may have negative cash flow, but you're still a target, because what's the general public's perception of a real estate investor? Rich. You're rich. That's why it makes you a good target for a lawsuit. A little bit of my qualifications there. I do teach some other classes on privacy and asset protection, but the land trust is really the most popular that I do. All right, so what's a land trust? It's nothing more than just a few pieces of paper. You need 2 things. You need a trust agreement and you need a deed. Most of you in here are already familiar with deeds, right? It's a little different deed. It's called a deed to trustee. It's got a little different language, but 98% of it's just like any other deed that you've seen. The trust agreement is a contract between the trustee and the beneficiary. Falls under contract law, and under contract law, we can decide and agree to do anything we want to do as long as it's legal and not against public policy. So, for example, Cam and I could agree to meet tomorrow morning out at the pier, have a cup of coffee, and go make some offers on some houses. We can sign a contract that we're going to do that. We can't sign a contract saying we're going to meet tomorrow morning out at the pier and have a cup of coffee and then go rob the local bank. That's illegal. So you can't contract to do that. But short of that, you can contract to do pretty much anything. So that's what the trust agreement is a contract between the trustee, who holds full legal and equitable title of the property, and the beneficiary, which may be you, your LLC, or your corporation. Everybody with me so far? Any questions so far? Charge on. We need two parties to the trust agreement. We have a trustee and a beneficiary. We talked about that. And the cost to create these trusts, $0. Doesn't cost anything to create a land trust. And that's part of the reason why a lot of attorneys won't recommend it to you. Because you can do this yourself, but it doesn't cost you anything. Now, what's the cost to form an LLC in California? $800, right? Every year they're going to send you that bill for $800. What if you formed a LLC in Nevada, which a lot of Californians do, and you buy real estate in California and title it in the name of your Nevada LLC? What does the state of California do? They charge you $800 on that one too. Okay. Now, listen closely. If you buy real estate in California and title it into a land trust, and make the beneficiary of that land trust your Nevada LLC, your Nevada LLC is not doing business in the state of California, and therefore doesn't have to register, and therefore doesn't have to pay $800. The land trust is doing business in California, and it's not required to register. This just saved you $800 a year, didn't it? Plus, you need an LLC from out of state. You don't want a California LLC. Other states have much better laws for your LLCs, like Nevada and Wyoming, to be more specific. For you history buffs, if you care, land trusts have been around a long time. I didn't just invent this stuff 30 years ago. It's been around really thousands of years. First one was created by Chicago Title in Chicago, Illinois, to create a suburb over 100 years ago. But they're around. They are legal in California, even though you'll find a lot of attorneys that tell you they're not legal in California. They are legal. I know. I've been a trustee on a California land trust for the last 15 years, so they definitely are legal. What can we put in a land trust? What types of property can we put in there? Well, pretty much anything that's real estate or real estate related. Okay? All this stuff. It wouldn't surprise me if this hotel isn't in a land trust.
Can
Yes, sir?
anything on real estate be put in a land trust?
Anything on real estate?
No, anything that is not real estate, other business.
No, you would not put anything other than real estate or real estate related assets in a land trust. Now, you could put a business in another type of trust. You can put personal property in a personal property trust. But land trusts are specific to real estate. Air rights, mineral rights. I had a guy call me last year and he said, I want to get your home study course, Randy. I said, what are you going to do with it? He said, well, I've got 1,500 oil and gas leases. And some of them go boom and some of them go bust. And I don't want them in the same entity. Didn't Grandma teach us you don't put all your eggs in one basket? That's putting your eggs in one basket. If you put all your properties in one LLC or even one land trust, that's pretty dumb. So he wanted to create 1,500 land trusts. It would have cost him a fortune to hire somebody to do that. So he wanted to learn how to do it himself so he could save a fortune. And so he got my home study course, which teaches you how to create your own trusts and provides all the forms that you need.
Excuse me, do you
Yes.
file tax returns for land trust?
No, tax returns don't file, land trusts don't file a tax return and they don't get a tax ID number. They are what the IRS calls a flow-through entity. So from the IRS standpoint, they look at it as if they don't care whose name it's in. If it's in your name personally or in the name of a trust, the beneficiary reports the tax good and bad, the tax benefits. So they said, don't tell us, we don't care, just report it to us. Yes, sir.
Making a Nevada LLC beneficiary, do you still retain the same legal benefits in California if you're doing your business in California?
Well, you still retain the same benefits. I don't know what benefits you're looking for in the state of California, but you still get the same
Protection
tax.
on LLC.
Yeah, yes. You get the same benefits, and there are actually added benefits to using an out-of-state entity. Let me give you an example. I live in Illinois. All my investment properties in Illinois. I don't use Illinois Land Trust. There's no federal land trust law. It's all state by state. So, for example, I could form a Florida land trust to hold title of my property in Illinois. Boy, that sounds kind of interesting, doesn't it? Who would ever think to do that?
Excuse me, why do you do that? Land trust, meaning of land trust, it is different than ABC trust?
Well, there are thousands of different kinds of trusts, but a land trust is just for real estate.
Okay.
Just for real estate. Yes, sir.
So you have a beneficiary, a trustee, and what are the parties to the land trust?
You have a trustee, which holds title. You have the beneficiary, which controls, tells the trustee what to do. So what's interesting, you raised this question about tax return. From a tax standpoint, you still own the property, right? It flows through to you, the beneficiary. You get the depreciation, you write off taxes and the interest. But from a legal standpoint, you don't own it. Isn't that interesting? You get the benefits without the ownership. Does life get any better than that? I don't think it does.
Oh,
I
what
don't think
difference
it
does it make if you put it in a trust or you put it in a land
Like
trust?
a living trust, like a
Like living trust, revocable trust, no revocable, what's the difference?
A land trust is a type of living trust,
Okay.
specific to real estate. Living trusts have no privacy and no asset protection until you die. Then they become irrevocable. So, for example, many of you might already have a living trust in here that your attorneys set up when you were doing some estate planning. And oftentimes they'll record it. Oftentimes they'll put your name, they'll call it the Randy Hughes Living Trust, and they'll record it. I've even seen Social Security numbers put in the name and recorded. There's no asset protection benefit. Plus, living trust, you dump a whole bunch of stuff in there, don't you? You got your jewelry and the silverware from Aunt Maud, and you put in your motorcycle and a piece of real estate and a slip and fall that doesn't have insurance coverage, all of a sudden takes it all away. So you don't want to put more than one asset in one trust while you're alive. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
You can still do a 1031 exchange with them?
You can still do a 1031 exchange. You can do that at the trustee level, or you can do it at the beneficiary level. So if you have your property in a land trust and you want to exchange it for 1031 exchange, you can exchange from one trustee to another trustee, or a trustee to an individual, or two beneficiaries can exchange. Okay? Who can use a land trust? Well, all these people and all these parties can use a land trust. So pretty much anybody and everybody can use a land trust. So if you have a partnership with somebody, that partnership can create a land trust. If you have an LLC, the LLC can create a land trust. If you have a corporation, it can set up a land trust. These are really, really flexible. So why should you use a land trust? Anybody got any thoughts on this? I got a few.
3 reasons.
Yes, sir.
So when someone runs my name, they don't see everything that I own?
Very good. I mean, that's such a good question. I'm going to give you a hard copy of that booklet, 15 Reasons to Use Land Trust. Well, and I'm serious. Just imagine, here's how a lawsuit starts. I run over Dan's dog. Dan goes to his attorney and says, so you got him upset. He's upset.
Not the dog.
Dan goes to his attorney and says, I'm going to sue Randy Hughes. He ran over my dog. His attorney is not stupid because he made it through law school. And he turns to his computer. He says, what was that guy's name again? Randy Hughes. He types in his computer. And first scenario is his printer starts printing all this property that's in Randy Hughes' name. And his attorney turns to him and says, Dan, I think we got a case here. We're going to file this on a contingency fee basis. You don't have to write a check at all. We're going to go get Randy. Now, let's try scenario number 2. He types in Randy Hughes' name, and the printer doesn't budge.
The printer is broken.
The printer isn't broken. There's nothing in Randy Hughes' name. Now his attorney turns and says, you know, Dan, I got a dog too, and I love him dearly. So we're going to sue this Randy Hughes. But not really sure if he's got some hard assets or not, so here's what I need you to do. Get your checkbook out there. I need you to write a check for $10,000. It's just called a retainer. I'll put it in my escrow account, and I'll send you a letter once a month telling you how many hours I've spent on this lawsuit. And when we run out, I'll ask for another $10,000. Now, Dan's got a decision to make, doesn't he?
We're not doing it.
You're not suing.
What's that driver?
That's exactly where you're going to stop 9 out of 10 problems at the door of ownership. For that very scenario, that's how America works, unfortunately. So, privacy is the #1 and the cheapest method of asset protection. Just not having your name in the public records. Yes, sir.
How would land trusts like work in like a relationship if there was like a fallout, like a divorce or something like that? Or
Well, it depends on how you set them up. But I asked, 35 years ago when I started using these trusts, I asked that very question of my attorney. I said, you know, if we put all these properties into trust, and you know, my wife is the bookkeeper, and I'm out creating commerce and industry and stirring up trouble, so I'm more apt to get sued than she is. So we'll put them all in trust, and she'll get the good ones, and I'll get the bad ones. What happens if we get divorced? He said, well, you still have a legal right to her, to half of her beneficial interest. I said, oh, that's real interesting. So I don't have a legal interest now. You can't sue me and get any of it. But if I get divorced, I have a right to it. That's in Illinois. Now, you guys are a little different community property state. So that's how it worked there. I thought that's a pretty good scenario. I've often wondered in California why people don't use land trusts instead of prenup agreements. I mean, you know, a prenup agreement, think about the timing on that, you know. We're in love. We're parked out at Lover's Lane, looking at the moon, and I say, dear, and before we get married tomorrow, would you mind signing this? Kind of a damper on affection, isn't it? Whereas, if I had everything in a land trust, I wouldn't have to have that sign. Because you can't partition assets in a land trust. What does that mean? If Dan and I buy a piece of real estate together and we go on the deed together, and we have a falling out, and I say, well, I think we should sell that property, Dan. And you say, well, I don't want to yet, Randy. It's not good timing. The market's bad. Well, I need the money. I can go to the court and force the sale of that property. It's called partition. I can force Dan to sell his interest along with mine. You can't do that in a land trust. If Dan and I buy this property, put it in a land trust, he's a 50% beneficiary, I'm a 50% beneficiary. You can't force partition. Kind of keeps everybody honest, doesn't it? So there's just, there's reason number 34 or something in there, is you can't partition. They're all in there. Yes, Dan?
Is there anything in there to help probate issues and to avoid probate for land trust?
There sure is. Land trusts avoid probate. And I can give you a real life example that's too fresh in my mind. My wife died November 3rd of last year. We've been married for 41 years. everything we owned was in land trusts, you know, with LLCs as beneficiaries and corporations and the whole mess. We're not even gonna have to do an estate return, tax return, because you have to have more than $100,000 in value of your estate to file probate. And since everything was in trust, you know, her personal items didn't add up to $100,000. It all flowed through, just like a drain. It all just flowed downhill. Boom, lands in her living trust. I have a living trust, she had a living trust. Now, what's interesting about that scenario is, again, from an asset protection standpoint, I always figured that I would be more apt to be sued. I'm the guy out dealing with tenants. I'm out talking to people in California. And so we set up our estate where she owned 95% of everything. Her LLC did. And I own 5%. So now all 95% of our estate flows down into her living trust, which becomes irrevocable upon her death. He can't get at it. Creditors can't get at it. Nobody can get at it. I'm the trustee of her living trust. I can buy some groceries once in a while and fly out to California once in a while on the trust, but I can't get it either. I can just get the benefits. So if you get me and chew me up in court, you ain't gonna get much. So these trusts really, really work. And this is why wealthy people have been using them since time began. Yes, ma'am?
Does it help any way or save anything on taxes when things are transferred through a death or whatever with the land trust?
No.
Tax-wise?
There's really no tax benefit to a land trust. Really, very little, I should say. There's a little bit, for example, what's your state income tax here?
Too much.
8 or 9? In Florida, it's 0. In Nevada, it's 0. So let's say you were a resident of Nevada and you bought property in a land trust in California. The income would pass through that trust to the beneficiary who's living in Nevada. You report that your income in Nevada on your tax return. So you could, the only savings is a little bit of state income tax, but there's no federal or state savings. Yes, sir?
What about county transfer taxes? If you're transferring an existing ownership into a...
Yeah, good question. Many of you in here already own real estate in your name, so you're thinking, well, is it still to my benefit to get into a land trust? Well, yeah, get the property out of your name. That's the first thing you should do. So when you trot on down to the LA County Recorder of Deeds, they've got a 2-page document, and you check the box under transferring to my trust. So you don't get a transfer tax, is what we're getting at here. You don't want to pay transfer tax on your own property because you're taking it out of your name, putting it into a trust. So yeah, there are exemptions for that. Okay?
You mentioned that it can be, the beneficiary is the LLC, and it's you.
Can be, yeah.
Okay. Now, when you rent it right now, you're getting the check under the LLC. When you put it into the trust, would the check go to the trust, or it still comes to the LLC?
She's talking about how does rental income flow when you've got your property in a land trust. Typically, you don't set up a checking account for a land trust since it doesn't have a tax ID number. Now, I wouldn't advise you to have your tenants make out the check to the beneficiary because that kind of gives up the ghost, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So I've found that the best way to do this is set up a property management account. You know, for example, if you were a property manager, and you might have all these people in this room as clients, they all have property, but all your tenants are going to make out their checks to your property management account, ABC Property Management. You're not going to have 20 different accounts for 20 different customers, clients. You're going to have one property management account. So all the tenants will make their checks out to Orange and Blue Property Management. And then once it's in that account, then you'll distribute it, you know, so much each month to each owner. So you can do the same thing for yourself. You set up an account, just call it, you know, property, such property management, have the tenants make it out. But you don't want the tenants to make it out to the beneficiary because that exposes who the beneficiary is. Yes, Dan?
If you're setting up your own property